The calm before the storm in Los Angeles was almost too serene. As the late summer sun bathed the city, the Forrester mansion stood as a testament to years of family legacy and success. For Taylor and Ridge, it seemed like a time for new beginnings. After years of ups and downs, the couple had found their way back to each other. Their love story, one that had been filled with heartache, misunderstandings, and the occasional betrayal, was now poised for its most promising chapter yet. Ridge, once torn between Taylor and Brooke, had finally made his decision. He had proposed to Taylor, and the couple had begun planning their wedding, eager to solidify their bond once and for all. The Forrester family, including their children, rallied behind them, eager for a moment of happiness after so much drama. But, as with most things in the Forrester world, peace was only temporary. As Ridge and Taylor made their wedding preparations, a shadow loomed in the distance, one that would soon cast its dark and unexpected light on their future. Thomas, Taylor's son, who had been absent from Los Angeles for nearly a year, was set to return at the beginning of September 2025. His time away had given him the space he needed to reflect on his actions, to work through his personal issues, and to rebuild his fractured relationships. But his return wouldn't be the smooth reunion everyone hoped for. Thomas was not returning as the son everyone remembered. He had changed, but not in the ways his family might have expected. The calm facade of a family gathered in joy would soon be shattered by the revelation of a dark secret that would not only affect Taylor and Ridge's happiness, but would forever alter the course of their lives. Thomas had learned something during his time away, something so devastating, so far-reaching, that he couldn't keep it to himself any longer. It was a secret that had been buried for years, a secret that Taylor had kept hidden for as long as she could. And now, Thomas was prepared to expose it all. Taylor had a child she had abandoned in Europe years ago. This child wasn't just any part of Taylor's past. This child was her flesh and blood, a piece of her heart that she had left behind. The revelation was explosive, not just because of the child's existence, but because of what Taylor had done, or rather, what she hadn't done. Instead of raising her child, instead of giving the child the love and care it deserved, Taylor had walked away. She had left the child in Europe, choosing her career, her life in Los Angeles, and her family over the child she had brought into the world. This decision, this abandonment, was something no one had known. It was a stain on Taylor's perfect image, a betrayal so deep that it shook the very core of everything her family believed about her. And Thomas, the son who had grown up watching Taylor's often idealized life, and the way she portrayed herself as the loving, devoted mother, was the one who had discovered the truth. The revelation of this secret hit like a bombshell. The shockwaves felt throughout every corner of the Forrester family. It all started when Thomas confronted Taylor about the truth he had learned during his time away. He had always admired his mother, looked up to her, believed in her. But that image was shattered when he learned the truth about her past. For Thomas, the fact that Taylor had abandoned a child that could have been part of their family, part of their legacy, was too much to ignore. He felt betrayed, not just as a son, but as a person who had believed that his mother was incapable of such a thing. The revelation was one thing, but the weight of the secrecy that had surrounded it for years was even more shocking. Taylor had never confided in anyone about this child. No one knew that she had left behind a part of herself, a part of her past that she had refused to acknowledge. It had been a decision made in haste, one that Taylor had hoped to bury, hoping no one would ever uncover the truth. But now, as Thomas stood before her, the facade of perfection she had built came crumbling down. And as the truth unraveled, it became clear that no one, not even Ridge, could escape its consequences. Thomas wasn't content with keeping this revelation to himself. He felt that it was time to confront his mother, to make her face the consequences of her actions. But even more than that, he felt that it was time for Ridge to know. Ridge, who had been swept up in the excitement of their upcoming wedding, who had been so certain of his future with Taylor, deserved to know the truth. And so, Thomas made the decision that would forever change the course of their lives. He was going to expose the secret. Ridge, still basking in the glow of his engagement to Taylor, was blindsided by the news. The revelation hit him like a punch to the gut, and for a moment, he couldn't believe what he was hearing. How could Taylor, someone who had always been so loving, so caring, do something like this? How could she leave her own flesh and blood behind? The shock on Ridge's face was evident. He had trusted Taylor, believed in her, and now he was left questioning everything he thought he knew about her. The woman he was about to marry, the woman he had promised to spend his life with, had a past so dark, so filled with secrecy, that it left him speechless. His anger was palpable, but it was mixed with disbelief. How could Taylor, someone he had always viewed as a compassionate and nurturing figure, have hidden such a huge part of herself from him? How could she have kept something so significant a secret from her family? Ridge was torn. The revelation about Taylor's past left him questioning his own judgment. The woman he had planned to marry, the woman he had chosen over Brooke, now seemed like a stranger to him. The weight of Thomas's words hung heavily in the air as Ridge struggled to come to terms with the enormity of what had been revealed. The wedding plans, once so carefully laid out, now felt like an illusion, a fantasy built on lies and half-truths. Taylor's betrayal, her abandonment of her child, was something that Ridge could not ignore. It was not just a betrayal of him, but a betrayal of the family, of everything they had worked so hard to build. In the days that followed, Ridge wrestled with his emotions. His love for Taylor had been deep, but now that love was clouded by the bitterness of her secret. He could not reconcile the woman he thought he knew with the woman who had hidden this part of her past. It wasn't just the secret itself, it was the fact that Taylor had kept it from him, that she had not been forthcoming, and that she had made the decision to abandon her own child without a second thought. Ridge, feeling betrayed, made the difficult decision to cancel the wedding. The disappointment was not only in Taylor, but also in himself. The vision of their future together, one that had seemed so certain just days before, now felt like a distant memory. Ridge was left broken, questioning everything, unable to face the woman he had once trusted with his heart. The wedding was called off, and the Forrester family was left to pick up the pieces. Taylor, devastated by the turn of events, tried to defend her actions, but the damage was done. She had lost Ridge, and the future she had envisioned was slipping away from her grasp. As the fallout from Thomas's revelation spread, the entire Forrester family was forced to confront the truth about Taylor's past. Her actions, once hidden, had now been exposed for all to see. And with that revelation, the foundation of everything Taylor had worked for, everything she had built, began to crack. Ridge's decision to call off the wedding had shattered Taylor's world, and the impact of that decision would be felt for a long time to come. The future was uncertain, and for the Forrester family, the battle lines had been drawn. The war over trust, betrayal, and the truth had only just begun. The once idyllic life of Taylor Hayes was crumbling before her eyes, and she had no way to stop it. Her perfect world, built on years of trying to reconcile her past with her present, had shattered in an instant. All of her secrets, once carefully hidden, now lay bare for the world to see, exposed by none other than her own son, Thomas. It was a revelation she had never anticipated and never prepared for. The truth about her past. The child she had abandoned in Europe, a child she had once been forced to leave behind to protect her career and the life she had built in Los Angeles, was now the very thing that threatened to destroy her future. Taylor had lived with this secret for so long, buried deep within her soul, trying to convince herself that it was a part of her past that no one needed to know. But in the blink of an eye, Thomas, in his quest to seek justice for his own fractured relationship with her, had ripped it all open, and now there was no going back. When Thomas revealed the truth, The room had fallen silent. Everyone had turned to her, waiting for some kind of explanation, some kind of defense. But there was nothing she could say. The damage was done. Taylor had abandoned her child, a decision that, to her, had been a necessary sacrifice in order to keep her life and career intact. She had thought she could move on from that part of her life, but she had underestimated the power of the truth, and the fact that Thomas, her own son, had uncovered it, made it all the more devastating. Taylor was left speechless, standing there in front of her family, her life laid bare, with no way to undo the damage. She could see the disbelief in Ridge's eyes, the hurt and betrayal that were beginning to cloud his expression. Taylor had always been the compassionate, loving figure in Ridge's life, the one who understood him, the one he had turned to when he had been torn between two women. But now she was just another person who had deceived him, and the weight of that betrayal was too much for him to bear. The wedding plans that had been so carefully crafted, dreams of a future filled with happiness and love, were now in ruins. Ridge's face, once filled with hope, now reflected a deep pain. He had believed in Taylor. He had loved her with everything he had. And now he felt like a fool. The woman he was about to marry had a secret so monumental that it had destroyed everything they had built together. In the aftermath of the shocking revelation, Taylor was left to pick up the pieces of her shattered life. Ridge, unable to process the enormity of the betrayal, made a decision that no one saw coming. He walked away. His heart was broken, and he couldn't bring himself to stand by Taylor's side after everything that had been exposed. Without a word, Ridge ended their engagement, canceling the wedding and leaving Taylor standing alone, facing the consequences of her actions. Taylor, overwhelmed with guilt and despair, felt like her world was crashing down around her. Ridge was the man she had always hoped to build a life with, and now that life had been ripped away. The weight of her past, the abandonment of her child, was now too much for her to carry. She couldn't face the people who had once admired and respected her. She couldn't face her children, her family, or even Ridge. In a desperate attempt to escape the suffocating pressure of it all, Taylor made a decision. She would leave. She would disappear from Los Angeles, from the people who had once been her world, in the hope that maybe, just maybe, the pain would fade if she left it all behind. She packed her things quietly, not telling anyone, not even Ridge, where she was going. She needed to be alone, to try to come to terms with the mess she had created, with the weight of her guilt that now seemed impossible to bear. Ridge, still reeling from the shock of it all, couldn't believe what was happening. One moment, he had been planning a future with Taylor, and the next, she was gone. Her disappearance only compounded the heartbreak. He had been blindsided by her betrayal, but now, knowing that she had left without a trace, Ridge felt as though he had lost everything. The woman he had loved and trusted was gone, and there was no way to fix what had been broken. As the days went on, Ridge was left with nothing but the cold emptiness of his home and the painful memories of his time with Taylor. But it didn't take long for him to realize that there was only one person who could help him heal, one person who had always been there for him, even when he had made mistakes. Brooke. Brooke, the woman who had always understood him, the woman who had been there for him through thick and thin. Ridge had spent years torn between Taylor and Brooke, but now, in the wake of Taylor's departure, there was only one person who could give him the comfort and understanding he so desperately needed. Brooke had always been there for him, even when things were difficult, and now Ridge found himself turning to her once more. As Ridge and Brooke reunited, the bond between them seemed stronger than ever. The years of heartbreak and confusion seemed to melt away as they rediscovered the love they had once shared. There was no longer any hesitation, no more indecision. Ridge knew, without a doubt, that Brooke was the one he was meant to be with. There were no more distractions, no more lingering questions. The betrayal of Taylor, the loss of his dream with her, had pushed him back to the person he truly needed in his life. As Ridge and Brooke moved forward together, the Forrester family began to heal. The fallout from Taylor's departure was still fresh, but the support and love between Ridge and Brooke helped them navigate the storm. Ridge, despite his pain, knew that he had made the right choice. The uncertainty that had once surrounded his relationship with Brooke was now replaced with clarity. The decision to return to her was one of the most profound he had ever made. Meanwhile, Taylor, now alone and exiled from the life she had known, struggled to reconcile with her past. She had abandoned her child. She had betrayed Ridge. And now she was left to face the consequences of those actions. She had no one left to turn to. No one but herself. The isolation was unbearable, and the shame she felt was suffocating. Taylor had never imagined that her life would unravel in this way. She had hoped for a future with Ridge, a future where they could build a life together. But now everything was gone. The family she had once been a part of, the life she had worked so hard to create, was slipping through her fingers. Ridge, now fully reunited with Brooke, had no intention of looking back. He had made peace with his past and was now focused on moving forward, rebuilding his life with the woman he had always known was meant for him. Taylor, on the other hand, was left to navigate the ruins of her life, haunted by the decisions she had made and the people she had hurt. The story of Taylor's downfall was one of betrayal, regret, and self-doubt. Her own son, Thomas, had exposed her darkest secret, and now she was left with the consequences of her actions. The once strong, confident woman who had stood beside Ridge was now a shadow of herself, lost and alone in a world that had no place for her. Ridge and Brooke's love had been rekindled, but for Taylor, the journey ahead was far less certain. She had betrayed the man she loved. She had abandoned her own flesh and blood. And now there was no way to undo the damage. Ridge, free from the weight of the past, moved forward with Brooke by his side. Taylor, once the central figure in his life, was now nothing more than a distant memory. The story had come full circle, and the Forrester family, once filled with hope and promise, had now been torn apart by lies, secrets, and betrayal. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: the road ahead for each of them would be filled with challenges, heartache, and a quest for redemption.